Beautiful. You know, you on that point about African women, black women and sisters leadership here. Let's just touch on the relationship with Mama Afeni Shakur, also now our ancestor. Yeah. And it's interesting to me that while it is said that their relation, their union didn't last. Yeah. His fathership in relation to Tupac Shakur seemed to maintain itself. Yeah. So are you able to speak to that? Just the dynamics of their relationship, anything that you can share, and then how that evolved in terms of him being a father to Tupac, even after they separated.
And I think this is important too.
Yes,
one thing to mention is that, you know, he's not the biological father of Pac. And at the same time, he never said my stepson Tupac. It was my son Tupac. And so he maintained communication with Pac, and even when he's incarcerated, they would talk, you know, through phone conversations and things of that nature. And he actually gave direction to Pac on a lot of things, and then even asked us to fill in the void when, you know, he thought Pac needed help. When I say us, you know, people who were politically associated with him.
Right.
And so actually it was another of Pac's godfather, if you will, Geronimo, who in I think it was around 1989, Pac, Afeni and Pac were living in Marin City, California.
Right.
And you work on Geronimo's case. And during that time, Afeni had her challenge with substance abuse. And so Pac wanted to rebuild the Black Panther Party. And so Geronimo said, look, go down and deal with these brothers and sisters down and at that time in Los Angeles. And we had a youth group, the New African Panthers. So when I met Pac when he was a kid, but when I developed a relationship with him is after we tried to make the New African Panthers into a national organization, and Pac comes here. So Pac becomes like our first chairman because he wanted to be the chairman. Right?
This is the organization also known as Panther Cubs, right?
No, this is the New African Panthers. So you see, Pac was our first chairman in 1989. He comes down here. He speaks at Morehouse College. You know what I'm saying? He developed some music. If you kind of hear on his first album, America's Nightmare, he lists all these political prisoners, and at the end, you could hear him whisper "New African Panthers."
Yes.
So that was because it was an associate group of our New African People's Organization at that time. It was a youth organization. He didn't stay in it long because he was going back to Marin City, and again, his mom was going through her challenges then, and then he was actually fending to eat and stuff like that. And then his hip hop career jumped off. But coming back to Mutulu, he would, you know, always talk to him about, you know, life, because Pac, and I can say this from knowing him, I actually knew him. I'm not just talking as a scholar. He was always, even though he had the relationship with Mutulu, he was still looking for that father energy. He would talk about before he made it, like, okay, I got to go back to Marin City. I ain't gonna have no daddy to talk to me about girls. I ain't gonna have no daddy to teach me how. Now this is the vulnerable. This is the Pac I knew as a teenager. You know, even before I had spoke to him when he's a star and stuff too. But through that period, he's engaged with Mutulu, and Mutulu gives him energy, and he comes to provide support to Mutulu. He mentions him, not only mentions him in songs, but he comes to the prisons he's at, right? He begins to promote this whole concept of the code, which comes together because Mutulu beaten with men inside, and in that tradition of Abubadika Sonny Carson, He's trying to figure out how can we bring, in light of what you're saying, that we've always tried to deal with the ills in our community. How can we decrease the level of violence? How can we stop some heinous activity that we're doing, in the community? How can we slow that down and so bring some more peace? And so they create something called a code inside, and then Pac begins to champion that outside. There's also, after Pac is killed, there's a beautiful eulogy, if you will, that Mutulu writes to Pac. But they maintain that relationship throughout Pac's life.
And one of the ways in which that manifests, because I've seen a clip of sorry, before I get to that, just to say there is a video online that you can find of Tupac speaking at the Malcolm X grassroots movement.
Right.
Right, which is when you see MXGM, for those who are just here, that's the organization that
I was there that night.
Right, you know what I'm saying?
You might see me there, but I'm 100 pounds lighter and I got hair on my head.
You know what I'm saying?
And it's not great.
You know, so yeah, just to say that connection with the movement Pac always maintained, right? And even though you will hear him critical of the movement and say what, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes critical with love at the same time as well.
Oh yeah.
And trying to give us a reality check, right? Give the movement a reality check in terms of what the younger generation is going through. And
Pac was one of our children.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know, he was one of our children. So yeah, there would be that tension and critique at times.
Yes,
but
sir.
There was always that love.
That love, 100%.
There was always that love, and he always saw himself as part of a movement as well. He just was presenting it in his own way.
His own way, and let's get to that, because there's an interview with Baba Mutulu where he's saying that he challenged Pac, yeah, in terms of thug life, yeah. Now we know thug life, yeah. Those of us who are raised on Pac, they hate you gave little infants, F's everyone, right?
Right.
We understand, you know what I'm saying. But apparently, according to Baba Mutulu, when he first was saying it, it's like Mutulu was concerned. So he challenged Pac to define it. Yeah, you can't just put it out there. He said you have to define it. And from my understanding, that's where the definitions come from, and also the thug life code comes from. Yeah, the Baba Mutulu challenging Pac to define what it is that he's presenting to the masses. Are you able to speak to that at all?
Yeah, when he came out with Thug Life, Mutulu wasn't alone. We was all like, "What are you talking about?" And it was Pac's manager during that time.
Yes.
is one of our elder comrades and a close brother, I would say, to Mutulu, Watani Tai Himba. And Watani is the one that, you know, he explained to me when he talked about thug life, and this is what in the question you see Mutulu asking, what are you talking about? It wasn't like people who snatch purses or sell drugs in our community. It's about people who are outcasted in society.
Yes, sir.
People, the undesirables, if you will.
Outlaws.
And so, in fact, Pac's first idea, even before he becomes a star, he wants to create a label called Out the Gutter Records. And then later on, I think he wanted to call it, he told me, Underground Railroad, because he wanted to take people he was connected to in the streets.
Yes.
And, you know, put them where they could have sustainable life through the music industry. And so he's always looking out for people who he identified with who were forgotten about in this system and couldn't get inside of nice schools or nice neighborhoods and things like that. And so that's where Pac was coming from. Again, the Mutulu, because I know even in going in prison where he was at, he would have the prisoners who he thought were more conscious provide security for me and other people coming inside. And I said, man, why are you doing this? He said, you can't trust all these MFs in here. That's just a private story. Okay, you can't trust everybody that's in here. I need to protect y'all make sure that nothing happens to the guests who are coming in here. So he recognizes there's some elements in our community.
Yes, sir.
Even though we shouldn't be scared of them, we're gonna have to transform.
Yes, sir.
So Mutulu was conscious of that element.
Yes,
but
sir.
he's meeting with folks, and so he meets with other shot callers, if you will, people who are heads of different street organizations or big time, even big time drug dealers and stuff, who are behind the wall, and they come up with this code. How can we bring about more peace?
Yes, sir.
In turn, they give it to Pac and to Pac's to Mutulu's other son, Mopreme. Mopreme is and his wife Talia, who Mutulu lived with when he's out of prison. But they promote, and Mopreme was part of the Thug Life group with Pac, as well as, you know, he had his own hip hop career before that. He was on the Tony album, you know, song, the single "It Feels Good." But anyway, you know, so they promote it out in the public along with Mutulu's name on it to give it some credibility, and because, you know, the streets love Pac.
Yeah.
And even though Tupac didn't grow up as no gangster, the gangsters loved him.
Loved him, yeah. Most there. Now that's powerful. It speaks to the relationship between the movement and the street, so-called, and how that there's tensions there, but there's also resolutions towards at least reducing the violence in the community. More could be said on that, but for the sake of time, I'm gonna move on. Yeah.